Welcome to the February ETAC Town Hall meeting. Our topic today is an implementation progress report on our efforts around desktop virtualization. Come on in. And this is a really important technology that I think will benefit our students and faculty tremendously. I'm Joe Moreau. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Technology for the district, and this is part of our regular town hall meeting that our Educational Technology Advisory Committee sponsors. This is our second year of doing it. We do have a couple more topics for the rest of the year. Next month, we'll be giving an update on the Online Education Initiative. This is a statewide project that our district leads on behalf of the 113 colleges of the state to help improve the infrastructure that supports online instruction, and that the project is going exceptionally well. And in fact, in many parts of the project, we are as much as 24 months ahead of schedule, which is very exciting. So lots of good things to update for OEI, as we call it. In April, we'll be doing another information security awareness session. This is becoming a more and more critical topic for every single one of us, all of our students, all of our faculty and staff, every day, every week. So we'll update that. We've been doing this a couple of years in a row, and we've actually seen some really positive effects from that. We've seen reduced incidents of people volunteering their credentials to criminals and things of that sort. So we want to continue that awareness program. And then in May, we have invited both of our college communications offices to hopefully do a preview of their website redesigns that are underway. Very, very exciting project for both of our colleges. And this is tentative at the moment. But so if they're ready, hopefully they'll share their progress with us and see how those are coming. If you have other suggestions or suggestions for other topics, I'd love to hear them, or you can email any of your colleagues that sit on the ETAC committee, and that roster is on the ETAC website, linked off of the ETS website. So please let us know. We'll be happy to fit them in as we can. Probably we might be able to get some additional topics in this year if there's a great demand for them, and if not, we can get them on the calendar for next academic year. So today we want to talk about virtual desktops and virtual desktop infrastructure, and this is a project that the district has been working on for quite some time. It's a very important technology, and I think it'll help us achieve quite a number of goals that are directly linked to our mission and of great benefit to our students. But what I thought we'd do is start with just a brief definition of what is a virtual desktop. I mean, everybody kind of knows what a real or regular desktop is. We used to think about desktops as devices like this that actually sit on your desk. Now, oftentimes, most people refer to a laptop as their desktop, and it sits on their desk, or it goes under their arm, or whatever works best for them. So what is a virtual desktop? Well, a virtual desktop is a desktop computer that, instead of running locally on a piece of hardware like this or a piece of hardware like this, it actually runs on a server. And that server is located in one of our data centers or machine rooms here at Foothill College or at De Anza College, or depending on how things develop in the future, maybe run at a data center in Salt Lake City or Atlanta or Austin, Texas, or any number of places. But for right now, they're located on our campuses. So a virtual desktop includes all the typical features and functionality and software that you would find on an actual desktop, but it runs on a server and is available to people from a whole variety of places. So we commonly refer to virtual desktop technology as VDI. That's kind of the shortcut term. Stands for Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. So when you hear people in ETS say, we want to think about using VDI here or there, or we're working on VDI, or whatever the case may be, that's what we're referring to, are virtual desktops, desktop computers that run on servers. So why would we want to do that? Well, for a variety of reasons. a virtual desktop can be accessed by almost any kind of device. So you can actually run a virtual desktop on a smartphone. A 100% Windows desktop can run on this device. It's not very usable, but it is possible. It can be done. But it also can be run on a whole variety of other kinds of devices. It can run on a traditional laptop. It can run on a traditional desktop. It can run on a tablet like an iPad or a Kindle Fire or any number of tablet computers. It can run, of course, on smartphones, but it also can run on devices that we call thin clients or zero clients. And these are very, very small footprint devices that are considerably less expensive than a traditional desktop or laptop, or maybe even less expensive than a high-end tablet computer. And they give us some very good flexibility in terms of being able to repair them. Actually, we don't repair them. We kind of discard them if they break. But they're less expensive. They use less energy. They put out less heat. And they perform in the same way that you would expect a typical desktop to perform. A virtual desktop can be available from anywhere you have an internet connection. So if you are a student or a faculty member or staff member and you need to get to your files and your software and your other connections to systems like Banner or things of that sort, you can do that very easily and successfully simply by going to your virtual desktop through a browser or through a small piece of client software that you run on your desktop computer. So there's a lot of advantages to kind of keeping all that stuff together in a nice, neat little package that's available to you from wherever you have an internet connection, as opposed to having to drag all this stuff around and run the risk of losing it or damaging it or having it stolen or things of that sort. And if you look at the history of some of the most significant data breaches in the country over the last 5 years, many of the largest were due to lost devices. Essentially, people who had very sensitive data on a laptop computer that got stolen out of their car, their apartment, or their house, or their hotel room, or whatever. So, for instance, the Veterans Administration a number of years ago had a data breach that they lost 28 million veterans' records, including Social Security numbers and things of that sort. That was on someone's laptop that was stolen. So by leaving all of this critical data and important software in a virtual desktop, you're guaranteed a somewhat higher level of protection from data loss or data theft. There is a limitation to virtual desktops. Virtual desktops only run software that runs on the Windows operating system. Now let me be clear about what that means. This is a Macintosh computer. You can access a virtual desktop on a Macintosh computer, on an Android tablet, on an iOS device, but you're only going to be able to get to a Windows environment or a Windows application. Right now, Apple does not support running their software or their operating system in a virtualized environment, but Apple devices can access virtualized environments. So important to remember. Going the wrong way. So why is VDI important? So we talked a little bit about access. Students can access applications anytime they need from anywhere. They can get a network connection. So I think this is really an important thing for a lot of students, particularly our students who may have full-time jobs outside of their school or may have family obligations or other life factors that make it difficult for them to come to campus during certain days and certain times to access software applications that are installed only in certain laboratories or even in the library. So by virtualizing some of this software, we can make that software available to students from home, from their work, from their bus on the way back to, from anywhere they can get an internet connection, they can probably get to some of our software. Secondly, I think for those students who have chosen in the past to say, well, I'll just go ahead and buy that software and install it on my own computer. That way I always have access to it. Well, that can reduce the need for them to actually purchase software, so they can save themselves some money and still have access to the resources they need to do their schoolwork and achieve their academic goals. Another important reason for using VDI is many industries are moving in this direction. This is becoming the normal way that companies, large and small, are rolling out desktops to their employees. They're using them in office environments, they're using them in manufacturing environments, they're using them in the field for remote workers. All kinds of companies are using virtual desktops and VDI technology as the normal way that they roll out desktop computers and provide access, particularly to sensitive information or high-end, high-value intellectual property that the company may own. And so I think it's important that we provide our students with an opportunity to work in that kind of environment and be comfortable with that and understand how it works, so that when they ultimately go into the workforce, they'll be familiar with that kind of technology. They'll have seen virtual desktops before. They know how they work. They know the kinds of limitations there might be on the things they want to do, and they're ready to go with current job-ready skills. And this is happening globally. It's not just happening in the United States. In fact, some countries are probably a little further ahead than the US is in terms of desktop virtualization. In terms of how ETS serves the campus community, one of the big advantages that I and my staff are really looking forward to is the ability for us to respond more quickly and more easily to modifications to the computing environment, whether it's a student computing environment, an instructional environment, or a staff and faculty environment. So virtualized desktops allow us to update software images, add new software, add other kinds of resources, and deploy those to dozens or even hundreds of computers across a campus or across the district in minutes and hours as opposed to days and weeks, because of the way that the technology works. It doesn't require us to actually go and interrupt classes or find time to get into a lab or things of that sort. So our ability to make changes as curriculum changes or as schedules change or any number of things is really enhanced by virtual desktops. Again, flexibility and agility is a real important part of this. So a computing facility, for years and years and years, colleges all over the country built special purpose computing facilities. So they would say, this is a business lab, or this is an English lab, or this is a humanities lab, or whatever the case may be. And those labs were purpose-built, and they had a specific complement of software installed. They were configured a certain way to meet specific curricular needs and things of that sort. Virtualized desktops allow a single laboratory facility to act as many kinds of disciplines just by the way that students log into the virtual desktop technology. So a lab can be an English lab in the morning, a business lab in the afternoon, a humanities lab in the evening, with very little effort on anybody's part to make that happen. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. Also, as changes occur in the use of computing facilities, again, we don't have to totally physically rebuild that lab to convert it from a business lab to an English lab or whatever the case may be. We really just need to provide that lab with access to a new image, a virtual image, that can then deliver the appropriate resources based on the changing needs of a department or the changing needs of the college. So it gives us a lot of flexibility and agility. And then finally, virtual desktop technology is very energy efficient. So if we're deploying thin clients or zero clients or smaller devices like Chromebooks and other kinds of things like that, they use a lot less energy. They put out a lot less heat, which requires a lot less cooling. So in general, the energy load on the physical plant of the college or even a building is often greatly reduced by using virtual desktop technology. So an important sustainability consideration. So how does this align with our college and district missions? And there's a couple of things. So I think most importantly, I think VDI technology really provides a great support to our equity mission. So we are able to use virtual desktop technology to broaden student access to college resources. So again, students don't have to come to campus to have access to the resource. They can have access to the resource from wherever they can get a connection. And I want to show you some data in a minute about device ownership levels among our students, because it might impress you as to how many of our students own devices that can take advantage of VDI technology. So we remove those place and time boundaries around accessing college resources, so students don't have to come to go to the library before it closes or to get into that lab during the 3 hours of open lab time there might be in a given day or a week. They can really adjust their access to college resources based upon the specific schedule limitations that they may have. It also does a very good job of leveling the playing field around device ownership. So in a minute I'll show you some data that we've got about how many of our students own what kinds of devices. But we also know that not all those devices are equal. Some of them may be really high-end, brand new laptops like this one, or a high-end, brand new desktop like this one, and others may be hand-me-down devices that they got from a parent or a sibling or an aunt and uncle that may be perfectly viable, but not the fastest, and may not have the processor speed that they might need for higher-end applications. But by using that device to access a virtual desktop, essentially a really high-end machine and a really low-end machine deliver almost the same computing experience for the student. So it really levels the playing field in terms of device ownership and how new those are and how expensive they may or may not have been for the student to acquire. So it's an important piece of our equity agenda for our colleges, I believe. Again, it's a leading edge technology. I think it's important for us to adopt these kinds of technologies as we see them being used broadly across the world in a whole variety of industries. It makes a lot of sense from a planning and resource perspective. It gives our departments, our faculty, our staff the opportunity to model best practices in computing for our students, and gives them, again, an opportunity to prepare for what is more and more becoming a very typical workforce environment. And then I think VDI also fits in very nicely with our sustainability goals across the district. It reduces our resource consumption. So if we begin using more zero clients and thin clients, very small scale devices that simply connect to monitors and keyboards and mice, that uses a lot less resources than a device this size. It also consumes a lot less power, puts on a lot less heat, and it also generally lasts a lot longer. So instead of a device like this, where we might get 3, 4, maybe 5 years of useful life out of it, in a virtualized environment, we might get 6 or 7 or 8 years out of a thin client device at about half the cost. So it can be very cost effective. So here's the data I was mentioning about student device ownership, and this was data from the fall of 2013. And what you'll see, the top row is how many students own smartphones, the middle row is how many students own laptops, and the bottom row is how many students own tablet computers. So you'll see it's broken out by campus. It's broken out by demographic groups, so Latino, African American, white, and Asian. And you'll see that the vast majority of students are already in 2013 owned a smartphone. In aggregate over the entire district, it's about 76% owned a smartphone. The numbers for laptop ownership are even higher than smartphone ownership. And again, they're extremely high regardless of demographic group, regardless of campus, and aggregately across the district, 85% of our students in fall of 2013 owned a laptop. Now, 2013, tablet ownership was not terribly high. Actually, it was pretty low, regardless of campus and regardless of demographic group. But in 2013, about 37% of all students throughout the district owned a tablet. I'm hoping that we'll be able to have an opportunity to redo this research for fall of 2016, so a full 3 years later. I feel what I would suspect to see in new data is that the smartphone number is probably in the high 90s, if not very, very close to 100%, but probably certainly above 90%, probably above 95%. I would almost expect to see the same kind of data for laptops. And I think, I don't have a good projection on what tablet ownership might be, but I would guess it's probably above 60% because there are so many more tablets that have come out on the market that are very, very affordable, some as little as $50. So I think we'll see all of these numbers go up. These two is close to 100%, this probably in the 60 to 75% range. But we'll see what that looks like if we have the opportunity to replicate that study in a couple of months for fall semester. So I think the main takeaway from this is that a lot of our students, of course not all, but a lot of our students have devices that can access virtual desktop technology, and certainly that those numbers are going up all the time. So what are some of the best uses of VDI technology? I think from an instructional perspective, one of the best uses is in our computer labs. Sharon, how many computer labs do we have across campus? About 50, you think? 60? Really? Okay. Across both campuses and Middlefield. Yeah, so closer to 100 labs. So by using virtualized desktop technology in those laboratories, we can provide deans and faculty and department chairs and program coordinators with a whole lot more flexibility as to how they use those labs, both in terms of their function, their scheduling, their turnover, those kinds of things. So we're finding some great uses in there. It provides some great agility for programmatic changes. So if a department decides that we're teaching a certain discipline using this kind of software platform, and now they want to go in a different direction, gives us some great opportunities to support that more quickly and responsively. Again, it reduces endpoint costs. So right now, we are refreshing virtually all of our desktop computers for computer labs out of our Measure C Technology Refresh Fund, using reduced endpoint technologies like thin clients and zero clients could really help us extend those dollars a little further into the future, and that's always a good thing. In multimedia classrooms, a configuration like this, we might provide access from the teacher station to a virtualized desktop. I think this would provide a whole variety of benefits to faculty. But it would make the portability of faculty resources a lot easier. So instead of having to drag your own laptop into class, plug it into the teacher station, all that kind of stuff, or bring your resources in on a USB drive or something like that, you can park all your resources in your virtual desktop environment and then simply go into the classroom, log into your virtual desktop environment, and all your resources are there. So it gives some great portability for faculty resources. And again, it can reduce endpoint cost for equipping and refreshing multimedia classrooms. And we have, I think, probably about, how many multimedia classrooms? 500? About 500 across the district. So that cost, that refresh cost adds up really quickly. And we are at a point with our Measure C program where we're having some challenges figuring out how we're going to continue that refresh program in the way that we have over the last 7 or 8 years. And then one of the great places where we use these is for kiosks, for registration kiosks and admissions and records, or perhaps even in the library. There might be some good applications for that. It really reduces the overhead and increases the security of these very public devices. So it makes it easier for us to provide those computing resources in places that we don't always have the opportunity to watch over to make sure that they're not being vandalized or things are being stolen or they're being misused in some way. So kiosks are a great use for VDI technology. Where are we currently using VDI technology? So our colleagues in the Foothill College PSME division have been real pioneers in this area. They started in 2012, getting ready for the new Physical Science and Engineering Center, PSEC as we call it, at Foothill. They really wanted to be ready to roll out virtual desktop technology when the PSEC building opened about 2 years ago. So right now they have about 300 student computers that are virtualized in PSME and throughout the PSEC, and their faculty are heavily using desktop virtualization in that division. So congratulations to PSME. They've been some great leaders in this area in instructional use of VDI technology. We've got a number of deployments at De Anza College currently: the Science Resource Center, Student Success and Retention Services, Veterans Resources, Financial Aid, EOP&S, A&R. A lot of these are kiosk-type computers, but not all of them. And we're getting very, very good feedback from those organizations about how well they work and how well they're supporting the particular function that they're intended for. And so we're getting really good user feedback to continue to refine and tune the VDI environment for performance and accessibility and things of that sort. We have a big rollout in the Advanced Technology Center at De Anza for spring of 2016. We're going to virtualize the language arts labs completely in that building, and we've been working very closely with the language arts faculty and staff and dean at De Anza. They have some of the most demanding needs of any of the departments, given some of the things that they do with video for language instruction and things of that sort. And so they've really challenged us to provide exceptionally high performance, particularly for high-resolution video. And I think our staff has done a really great job of working with our vendors, VMware and Dell, to come up with an optimized environment that I know will meet their needs. They've signed off on that and are very pleased with it in its proof of concept version. And I think if we can meet their needs, we can meet anybody's needs anywhere in the district. So we've learned a lot in working with our colleagues in language arts. Where else are we thinking about using it? Certainly as the Sunnyvale Center gets ready to open in the fall of 2016, that is planned to be predominantly a virtualized environment. So we're using a lot of VDI technology for staff and for instructional computing at the Sunnyvale Center. And so that'll be another great opportunity for us to learn more about how best to deliver this technology for a variety of uses, both administrative and academic. And we are, related to that, beginning to build out additional VDI infrastructure for Foothill College, and we'll continue to work with various stakeholder groups at Foothill in, say, computer science or the library or other departments to see where it might make sense to deploy some of this technology as we have the opportunity to refresh traditional desktop technology. So we'll be doing some pilots, I'm sure, with folks at Foothill probably in the fall or maybe winter of the coming academic year. So if you have any questions or comments, or you've heard any rumors or bold-faced lies that you'd like me to dispel, hopefully, please feel free to shoot me an email, give me a call, stop by the ETS headquarters in D120. We're happy to answer any questions you may have about VDI technology, how it works, what it looks like, where it's appropriate to use, where it might not be appropriate to use or might not be fully ready for prime time in certain areas. You can certainly also contact Sharon Luchu, our Director of Networking and Desktop Support, or Jose Rueda, who's leading the team that is doing our VDI implementation throughout the district. We're happy to provide any information you like. If you'd like us to come to a department meeting and talk specifically about how VDI might apply in your department and see some demos and things of that sort, we're also happy to do that. So let us know, and we look forward to working with you in deploying this very important technology for our students, faculty, and staff. So thank you very much.